So when I was young, maybe about 12 or 13 years old, I was attending Westbury Middle School and I lived in Long Island, New York, and I was surrounded by a great deal of friends. And I realized at that age, I was the person who my friends came to, whether it was for advice, to dump their load on. And I always put myself in a position comfortably to give advice or just to be available to my friends at that time. One story in particular, I had a girlfriend who was very confused about the things that she wanted to do and who she wanted to be. And I gave her a notebook. And in this notebook, I told her to write down just all of her ideas. Who do you want to be? What do you want to do? And where do you want to go? And when you're done, start from the top of that list and just work your way down. Years later, she told me how this book had such an impact on her life. And I realized in that moment that this was my superpower, the ability to give sound counsel and to really see what other people were struggling with and find solutions for them. And I enjoy doing that. So that's my superpower. So I am 29 years old and I am with child. I find myself in my therapy's office, conducting my weekly therapy sessions. And in this particular session, I divulged to my therapist that I was having suicidal thoughts. She immediately told my husband to take me to the nearest emergency room, and which he did. When we got there, this was Winthrop Hospital in Long Island, I was met with a psychiatrist. When I met with the psychiatrist, I felt comfortable. I was able to share with him the things that were happening in my life and why I felt like I no longer wanted to be here. Towards the end of that conversation, he handed me a piece of paper, and this paper read that I would be able to voluntarily commit myself to a psych facility or they would do it on my behalf. The fine print noted that if I were to volunteer, I would need a court order to go home. So I didn't want to go. I didn't know how long this court process was going to take. So I told him no. And when I did that, he took the paper from me and he proceeded to tell me that they were going to commit me anyway. So I didn't have a choice. Soon after that, I was escorted out of the hospital with no shoes, no jacket. It was near winter time, and I was transported to a facility. When I got to that facility, I was treated like a number. And my situation was spoken loudly among my peers. I remember, frankly, a nurse saying to me, "Why don't you want to talk to me? You said you wanted to kill yourself." I couldn't believe the unprofessionalism towards a person like me who was in need. It was at this point where I became the therapist who needed a therapist, and I needed someone to advocate for me, and I didn't have that. I grew up in Long Island, New York, and I am the daughter of two amazing people, Desmond and Dawn Skeets, who are from Jamaica, West Indies, and I grew up watching my parents work as a unit. There were times when my mother would have these elaborate, crazy ideas that my father halfway understood, but I've always seen him support her wholeheartedly. There was a point in my life where my mother wanted to open up a restaurant, and they went full throttle into the restaurant business, and it was an amazing thing to see. However, it was in that I suffered from issues of abandonment. My parents were not around much. When I would go to sleep, they would be coming home, and when I would wake up, they weren't there. And although they were working very, very hard to provide a life for me and my siblings, it was a seed in my childhood that caused me to yearn for something. I didn't understand what it was at that time, but now I know that these things contributed to my own issues of abandonment and how I want to operate as a parent. At this time, fast forward now, 29 years old, in this psych facility, it was the first time that I was able to address my parents and let them know these things and how it has contributed to my adult life. And I remember specifically speaking to my father and asking him, what did I do wrong? And he told me, well, for one, you're here. And it was at that time that I understood that he didn't understand. And one of the things that I've learned in life is how important it is to show grace. And it was in that opportunity, me being able to face my parents and allow them to understand what I was going through, even if they understood or not, that ability to give grace opened the door for such an amazing relationship that I now have with my parents and the understanding of who I want to be to my children. If I could go back and tell my 21-year-old self, give my 21-year-old self some gems, I would tell myself to, one, trust God and that everything was going to be okay. Everything is always going to be okay. So I say that because at a very young age, 21, 22, I gave birth to my first daughter. At that age, in my West Indian household, I did not graduate school. I did everything wrong. But somehow I was able to take that and turn it around. I was a single mother, and I didn't do it the right way. And then later on, I met my husband, and we did it the right way. We got married. I graduated from school. We got married, and I had my second child. In my marriage, things also didn't go the way that I planned. So here I was doing things the right way, and life still takes its turn. I find that in my personal life. I find that also in my business. The higher that I get, the more obstacles come my way. And what I'm learning is that I have to take time to see every area in which that I'm being attacked, right? What is happening in that area that I'm not getting? So I would tell my younger self to trust God because it always works out. When I put myself in position where I'm in front of God and I am vulnerable, when I put myself in a position where I'm vulnerable, I find that there is so much strength. And God has told me that where you are weak, I am strong. And it's a funny thing. It's a funny scripture because why do you want me to be weak? Why do you want me to be weak? But if I can press you, there is a testimony that is literally going to change somebody else's life. And I am thankful for the hardship. And I'm thankful to be a vessel to be used, especially in my industry where I'm dealing with families who don't always know how to tackle the mental health piece. But it's so important, and I can look at that and I can address that because I live that. I have been there where I was screaming out for help and nobody knew what to do. So I believe that the things that I have been through in life are my stepping stools, not just for myself, but for a body that is bigger than me and is truly speaking to my legacy. So trust God and know that everything is going to be okay. Okay, so fast forward to today. It is 2024. This year 2024. I remember at the end of 2023, I told myself in the new year, I'm going to have an event every single month. Now, the reason for this is because I wanted people to know who Nest Cares was, my non-for-profit with a mission to provide services for mental health and special education. So here I am doing all this work, but nobody knows me. So that was the goal in this year. And we started strong. January, February, March, great panel events that I had. And I realized during the month of January, February, March, April, all hell broke loose. And it says the higher that I got, the more frustration. And in the midst of all this turmoil, I knew that I had to keep pushing. My business was growing, my clientele doubled, and who I am now is a entrepreneur. I am the founder and CEO of a company that no one is doing in my family. And I am breaking barriers, I am setting trends, and I am leaving a legacy. That's who I am. And when I die, I want my work to live on, to continue to have an impact on people's lives, because that's ultimately what we're here to do, right? Give it our all. So when we're gone, you are gone depleted and you have given it everything. So that's who I am now, and there is absolutely nothing going to stop me. Okay, so why work with Nest Behavior Consulting and why get to know Nest Cares? Well, first you have to understand who we are. Nest Cares is a non-for-profit when we provide services for mental health and special education. We want to ensure that the family has access to services. Nest Behavior Consulting is the service. We provide therapy for children who have a diagnosis of autism or as IEP, an individualized education plan, where you are in need of some sort of special education support, whether that's parent training, behavior intervention services, one-on-one support in the school. We provide those services. We can work with your insurance, we can work with your school district to ensure that you are getting the therapy. But why work with us? Because I have an understanding of what it means to have your mental health neglected, I am also pouring into the nonprofit side to ensure that, one, we're not just providing the resources that are ethically bound to a school contract or what insurance is recommending. We want to also ensure that the family unit is being treated as well. If you are a parent who has a child with special needs, it does not mean that you are equipped with the tools to know everything. And if mom and dad are not okay, no amount of therapy for your child is going to be okay either. So what do you do when the therapist is not there? So here at Nest, we want to ensure that you have everything that you need, whether it's counsel for the parent, whether it's knowing how to advocate for yourself and for your child, and just having a listening ear to make sure that you are okay so that you can be the best advocate for your child. So that's why you should work with Nest. Outside of that, I did not know in 2018 how much of an impact I was going to have on my community, just being a woman of color in a field where there are not many CEOs who look like me. There are not many providers who look like me that are treating students who look just like us. I want to share a story with you. Starting out, I was a behavior consultant in my local district, school districts, and I realized that a lot of times when I would go into classrooms, I would ask teachers who were the problem children. And it was always the Black and brown boys, starting from a very young age. Now, as a consultant, you go in and your job is to write behavior plans that then stay with them through the course of their education, whether that's elementary school, high school, preschool. These documentations are going to stay with them. And a lot of times at this young age, it's really not the child. Maybe it's the style of teaching that needs to change. Maybe it's the way that school is connecting with home that needs to be examined. I understand that. And I teach my providers to understand that as well. And I feel confident speaking with a team, a special education team, so that they know that they need to understand that as well. So I want to change the narrative, and that is what I'm doing as an individual and who my company and what my company represents. Here's what I've enjoyed most of this experience and this documentary of an entrepreneur is that I have learned a lot about myself. I am learning how to not be ashamed of those things we don't like to talk about, because it essentially is my power. It is our power to talk about those things that are meant to shame us, because when you really dig into that and you tap into that, there is so much growth. And I'm enjoying learning about who I am so that I can show up for the people that I serve. So that's what I've enjoyed most thus far.